It is another episode of Offstage with Ward Anderson. I am your guest, yours truly, and today we are talking about ageism on screen. Yeah, I know. It's a heartbreaking subject. Or is it? Let's find out from my panel. He is a very popular, in-demand actor all over the world. He's been seen in movies like classics such as Good Will Hunting and all over television. And his name is Chris Britton.
Hello, everyone.
She is an actress, comedian, writer, and broadcaster. And she is also the producer and founding member of the She Comedy Festival. Her name, returning champion from season 1, Martha O'Neill.
Thank you, thank you.
He has been a casting director for over 30 years on numerous projects. He's also been a producer and award-winning producer of short films. His name is Ron Leach. And Monica Parker.
Can I get a taxi?
Of course, I'm talking about a legendary comedian, actress, writer, producer. She is also a best-selling author of such books as OMG, How Children See God. She's my friend, Monica Parker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Legendary immediately makes you old.
Is that it?
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't introduced a lot of legendary teens. You know?
Don't get legendary until you get to a certain age.
Yeah, or you kill someone.
There.
Okay, so I killed someone.
Oh, okay, all right.
That's it.
Because the Menendez brothers were legendary, even
Yes.
when they were young, right?
Yes.
Well, infamous, I would argue.
Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough.
Legendary is a good thing, I think. I don't know.
Well, you know what? Right off the bat, we talk about age, right? We talk about, there's one right there, legendary, legendary. There is something interesting about what we do, and it's not just performance. It's in general, we really try to put euphemisms on aging. We really do. When it's something that is, if you are lucky to live long enough, you're going to age, right? It's inevitable, but we do that. I've been told, I've noticed people say things like, yeah, he's 70 years young. And I go, you know what, we don't have to do
I find that patronizing.
I think it is too.
You know what's patronizing? And also when they call older people cute. Like, they have had more sex than you. They've had more meals than you. They are badass. They're not cute. Be nice.
Yeah.
No,
What
truly.
if they're Jesuits?
Hey?
What if
they're
they're Jesuits? Have they had more sex?
Probably.
Probably.
Are we going to go there?
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah.
More
No.
sex than Martha, for certain.
Yeah. Wah, wah.
But you know what?
I hate the word cute. Oh, she's so cute or he's so... No, he's a badass.
I guess it depends on what you're talking about. I mean, I remember, I was touring as a comedian, that we would have audience members would come in to some shows, and they would be in their 70s, let's say, and two things would happen. Someone would go, oh, look at that cute couple. And I go, yeah, they've been doing it doggy style for decades.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this idea that they're just because they're slower in their age, that somehow
Yeah.
they're these fragile little
And
creatures.
that's always been a bugaboo of mine.
And the other is that people, because they're of a certain age, that they would find the language offensive. Like, you better watch your language. There's some older people here. You better watch your language. There's some older people.
yeah.
I was like, these people were killing Germans not too long ago, right? In their world,
No,
they've
no.
been
I've
to
never
war.
killed a German.
They've conquered the war.
I have never killed a German.
They've saved the world at one point. You know what I mean? They're like, they're
also
in trenches waiting to be killed and killing people. And we think that if we say shit around them, they're going, oh, clutch the pearls.
I also don't like of a certain age.
yes.
Because the minute you say someone's of a certain age,
Well, that just
What age
means
is that?
not
I
a
have
good
no
age.
idea.
It means not a good
Exactly.
age.
it's not good.
Yeah.
I think
But I
those.
think also there's a difference in this time compared to people our age when we were kids. Like my grandfather, passed away when he was 69, and he was still going. Like he was still writing and working
And doing
every single
69.
day, and probably not with my grandmother, I'm afraid. But the people are so active now, and I don't see age at all, except in relationship to my work. Because I'm a casting director and I have to put families together. And so suddenly I'm looking at generational issues and how to construct an ensemble. And that's the only time I think of it, because otherwise people are just people to me.
Well, and interesting you saying, well, constructing. I auditioned for a show, and it was a mom, role, and it was a babysitter kind of thing. And I didn't get it, fine. But they hired a woman who was 25.
Apologize.
No, but they hired a woman who was 25 to be the mom of this child. And I'm like, I mean, come on, this is the one time that maybe, I know she was way cuter and younger than me, but maybe this is the time you hire me? You know what I mean? But, and I don't, that's where I get frustrated.
But the same can be said when they cast a commercial, not you. When others cast a commercial, and there's old people in it, inevitably they cast people who look doddering, and that's not the way I know any old people, older people anymore. I mean, I see very few people who are frail, and most people are wearing their yoga gear until they die.
Yeah. And we wish they would take
Mick Jagger
it
is older than everybody here. Mick Jagger is older than everybody here.
This is true.
And is
he
standing
wrote a
on
book.
stage, you know, wearing an outfit like this,
But wait,
rocking in front
did
of
you know
people.
he wrote a book and didn't remember?
No, really?
Yes, they just this.
That's not because of his
That's
age,
so
though.
awesome. No,
that's
that's because of the
that's-
drugs. But
yeah.
he
I
totally
wrote 2 books, I don't
forgot that he
remember
wrote
either.
a biography, and an agent found it. This is like a couple of weeks ago, and went, "There's an unpublished Mick Jagger book," and they got in touch with him, and he said, "I never wrote a book," and then he went, "Oh, yeah, I did," and he completely forgot.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I think a lot of those traditions that we have about older people are really changing. I think
Shattered.
because of our relationship with our own children now. We have a much different relationship than we had, at least I had with my parents. And so a lot of those sort of stereotypes that we have in our minds about what it is to be older are not really of the truth now. And I think in terms of our business, acting, it affects women much more by your
That's why
example.
Martha's on the show. That's actually why Martha's on the show, is because you and I are around the same age, and when it comes to casting, we're seeing completely different.
Totally differently. And
Yeah.
even in the comedy world, which I spend more time in, it's harder to get on shows. It's harder to be booked by clubs because they think, well, if I'm not doing this, if I don't have a JFL special, well, then what's wrong with you? There's a perception that there's a certain amount of success should be reached by a certain age.
For women.
For women.
Yeah.
More so than men.
Sure.
For
Yeah,
sure.
that's
Yeah, I
right.
think
Rodney
that's very
Dangerfield
good.
became famous in his 50s.
Yeah.
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 I've got one for you. So you have you also work as a broadcaster.
Yeah.
You've been a TV anchor. You've worked news. You've worked radio. I found this out when discussing women on screen on a recent episode. So here's where women are doing well. As far as TV news anchors go, 50% are women.
Yes.
Yeah.
50%.
Because the gravitas that is attached to news is more acceptable.
But I got
Don't
something
you have
for
to be blonde?
Not in Canada. Less so in Canada. I think the Americans enjoy their blonde
Newscasters.
anchors.
And,
Yeah.
and
But I got
we,
something
and
for
we
you.
have a remarkably diverse collection of newscasters in Canada,
Yeah.
which
Yes,
is
we do.
unlike the United
Yeah.
States.
Yes.
Yes.
But even in the United States, it's 50% female. It's the male and the female when it comes to news anchors, right? What percentage of TV news anchors and reporters are women over 50? I got that number for you.
Oh, anchors.
It's 50% up until around the age 50. What is it after 50?
Plummets to about 10.
5%,
Wow.
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
They say the gray hair in a news anchor who's a man,
Is a welcome.
it's considered, look, this is
Yeah.
this is your worldly news anchor. This man has been bringing you current events and news now for, look at him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's aged into
Yeah.
the part.
And
is
Whereas
there-
you will age out of it.
Is there?
Sorry,
Go
Chris. So interestingly, in news, in acting, in comedy, the older you are, the better for so many reasons. The life experience,
Sure.
everything. But and that's the frustrating dichotomy of aging. They don't want you, but you have all this amazing experience you've cultivated over the years, and you can't. There's no platform or less platforms.
And I think there's a difference between daytime television and evening news. Right? So the daytime news, in the morning, I think there's probably, maybe I'm wrong on this, a predominance of women or a larger majority of women than there is in the evening news.
Yes,
Yep.
that's absolutely true. It's still,
Because the men come home.
but there are still
Well, traditionally,
there are
that's
still more.
true.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Traditionally, it's true, and it is still true. There's still more women at home during the day than there are men.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. More women do stay home with children, maternity leave, these things, than men do. you know?
And the pressure.
It's changing, but it hasn't changed that much.
Yeah, the pressure for actresses to remain sort of youthful is, I think, a terrible burden, in terms of, facial changes that have to be, some women feel pressured to maintain.
And that leads to a whole other,
Yeah.
Whatever that is. I mean, taking fat from your ass and putting it into your lips. I mean, I have tons to spare. I could have lips that would go on forever. But I really don't understand. Could somebody explain to me when this became attractive? Oh, I know when it became attractive.
But
and I
is it
know.
attractive? That's my question.
Well, obviously it is to a whole
Certain-
host of housewives on Mars or wherever, wherever
Right.
they're coming
Oh, right,
from.
right.
That has become a totally normal. They see each other, and they go.
Looking
It's
good.
a-
I think that
they're
there's
another tribe. I mean, it's
I think
separate.
I think there's two classifications here, though, and that is, as a casting director, I have no interest at all, and would have a very, very difficult time selling to a network someone who has had augmentation,
That's right. Yeah.
because it doesn't look natural,
Especially
and
with
it certainly
HD.
does not look attractive.
Oh God.
Especially
Yeah.
with HD now.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah,
the
because,
cameras.
the camera like tells the truth.
Yeah.
Completely. Both
Yeah.
from what you're thinking as well as how you look.
That's right.
But someone who is vivacious, who has energy, I mean, I'm very fortunate because I do a lot of the Hallmark movies in Canada, and the construct of a Hallmark story is their leads are generally probably 35, 40-ish, but then the parents are the people that care the most and are the nurturers.
45, 50.
Yep.
Right.
No, but I mean,
Right.
60s easy.
Sure.
70s sometimes. A year or so ago, we took an enormous risk and hired an actor who was in his late 80s, and we couldn't get insurance for him, and so we wrote the riders ourselves and took the
Wow.
burden on to give this opportunity for this actor to act because he was too perfect to not have in the movie.
Right.
Right. and that's an extraordinary bit of sort of.
And a lot of people don't know that actors have to be insured on projects.
Absolutely.
And that a lot of times it's hard to get insurance for certain people.
Yeah.
And age is one of those factors.
Age is a big
sometimes.
factor. Overall health, if someone has underlying health issues that could impact production.
A known drug problem.
Well, that's a whole other story. That could be at any age.
Right.
And we don't get too many youngins with a problem, but we get people from their teens up who sometimes get into trouble.
Sure.
And we have to be very aware of that and cognizant that it might impact production.
Well, you know what, and you've worked a lot in TV movies, and I will say, I really do believe this. I think in television movies is where nowadays you're seeing a lot of genuine casting. You're seeing more of that there.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about, a couple of years ago, when making the new Spider-Man movie, when making the new Captain America movie, Aunt May. Old Aunt May in the comic books, well, she's now played by Marissa Tomei in the Marvel Comics movies. That got a lot of heat. That got a lot of backlash, and people went, Marissa Tomei is old Aunt May. And if you stop for a second and you get away from that and you just remove it and you go, yes, this is a very beautiful woman playing this character, you stop and you go, well, the character's supposed to be 16. And Marissa Tomei is almost 50. It is actually age appropriate, for all the talk it got, because in the comic books this character had always been drawn as an old woman. If you really think about it, a 16-year-old's aunt would probably be in her late 40s. That's not crazy. I found it a funny conversation, but then when I actually stopped and did the math, I go, it's not insane. But it was just still more of that. People went, well, they went to the beautiful actress. They went to the gorgeous, looks way younger for her years actress.
There's a difference between doing a studio picture and doing a television movie.
Sure.
In terms of the demands. And in television, and I also think the pendulum swings. I've had this argument for many, many years, and that is when television is doing a lot of social drama and a lot of good work in terms of the fabric of society, and they're exploring our dark issues and stuff. The movies are all about Lost in Space and Scooby-Doo, and it swings wildly. So right now we've got the era of the superhero movie, and everything is like stuff blowing up, and it's and or wild comedies. While television, you've got Criminal Minds, and you've got This Is Us. You've got phenomenal drama that's dealing with real issues and real people. And you look at This Is Us as a good example, and there's one of the leading storylines in This Is Us is a young African-American father who's reunited with his birth father, who he never knew, at the time of that man's passing from cancer.
Right.
It's brilliantly done.
It's beautifully, beautifully cast. I don't want to bite the hand that feeds me, but I write Hallmark movies, and you cast them, and they are a whole other subset of casting because they cast as though it was 1957, and they cast in a way that is very sort of Good Housekeeping magazine looks. I mean, there's a certain kind. It's very soap opera. They want their leads, not so much the character actors, but they want their leads to be a certain. They're almost like milk. You know, it's anonymous milk. I mean, I can't tell. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure.
I
but
like that.
but
Anonymous
it's,
milk.
Not famous milk.
It's
Not famous
No.
milk.
but at least it's not 2%.
No,
Okay.
it's,
You know,
There's a
we're
little
still talking about
but I-
television. It's going to be
But I
skim.
also think that there's I know that there's different classifications of film in the Hallmark world. So there's low budget, there's medium budget, and there's bigger budget films. And in the 6 or 7 years that I've been working almost full time for Hallmark, I've seen a remarkable change in content and restrictions, and they're willing to explore. And so I'm casting with a great deal more diversity now for their market, whereas before their movies were really white. But now they want, and in good roles, and in leading roles, they do want to make their movies look more like what you see in the lineup at the bank.
I think if we look at British drama, for example,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
think in
let's.
terms of how they cast women is quite different than how we cast.
Far more leading.
Imelda
women.
Staunton.
Yeah.
I mean, people who have real faces, real bodies, real everything,
Right.
and
Why?
who plays Vera. Just the fact that she can have her show.
I
She's
know,
so wonderful. Brenda Blethyn.
Yeah,
Brenda
Brenda
Blethyn.
Blethyn.
I mean,
Yeah.
she's like
This is a British show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's
but the British shows are filled
Valley.
with
Happy Valley, yeah.
whoever they are.
Broadchurch.
They look like
I love
humans.
Broadchurch.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you that. Why? Why is that?
I don't know.
First of all, why does English casting look more like the people on the street that we would see even here in North America, and yet we're not in North America? Why are they okay with it? What is going on that they're casting more realistically and everyone's fine with it? Would people be fine with it in North America, and we
know, it's
and
so many
we on the
years.
business side just think they won't?
Well, there was always an interesting comparison between American soap operas and Coronation Street, for example.
And
Yeah.
EastEnders.
That,
and, yeah.
you know, Americans would watch American soaps as something to aspire to because they're always upper middle class, upper class. Whereas Coronation Street was something that they felt was just like them,
Yeah.
or even socially beneath them. So there was kind of a leveling. Whereas in the United States, it was always looking up and aspiring to. So there was always that difference.
Yeah, I don't know if we
between-
could change our casting situation. I think it's so
Too far gone.
ingrained, unless it was a very slow. But I would love to see.
Well, I think in
a show.
independent film in Canada, you're seeing
Yeah.
a remarkable change.
Yeah.
And you're seeing collectives of actors come together.
Mm-hmm.
Actor has, which is our union that governs film acting and television acting, they've created some tremendous initiatives to allow people to create their own work.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the Young Emerging Artists program at ACTRA and the Acting Your Age program for older artists, both being incentivized by their union and in some instances challenged to write stories for their time. And I think that's spectacular.
Yeah, I think more women that get involved in the directing aspect of it and the writing especially,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
producing.
But here's
I'm glad you said that because I want your input on this. It seems to me, the more I read about this, that if a woman over the age of 45, especially over
Present.
the age of 50,
present.
is going to have to write and produce her own material and maybe even direct it if she also wants to star as the lead in that project. It seems every once in a while we have a movie that comes out that features, or even a TV show, that features a woman or women over the age of 50 in the leads. But more and more, it seems that when those come out, it's because it was written by one of those women, directed by one of those women. Is that what you have to deal with?
Well, LA is a whole other world. So as a writer, I mean, first of all, as an actor and producer, I have been in rooms where TV movies that I have produced have been cast, the casting people in the network, and this is true, and I have to say this word, but so if you're casting a lead of a woman, and often it's women in the room who are making these decisions at the top of the network, and so they'll bring in their final choices, and I have seen this happen, where a girl has come in and she's done a fantastic job, and when she leaves, they turn around and someone has said, "Did you see those shoes?"
Wow.
And the girl did not get the part because, "Did you see those shoes?"
Oh my God.
And then the other one is a guy will come in, and great guys will come in, wonderful actors, and somebody will come in and do a stellar job. They may not be as well known, and so the guy will turn around the room, and same executives, men and women, will go, not fuckable. And that's the end of that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that I've seen this more than once. As a writer, I mean, I had a moment in my life that changed my life. I was looking for a new agent because the literary agent I had spent about 45 minutes of foreplay on every conversation talking about her hair, and till we could get to business. Was it too stripy? So I fired her, and I was looking for a new agent, and
Because she was too stripy?
yeah, I fired her because of that.
I know. And now she's repped by her stylist.
Yeah.
It's like-
Be honest, you fired her because fuck those shoes.
Fuck those shoes. So anyway, a new agent had read some of my work and called me from a really great agency, and we had a phone call, and she said, "I've read your stuff, I love your stuff." And we had a conversation that it rambled into many directions, and at the end of it was a girl crush. I knew she was 30-something, and she thought I was. I have a young voice, and I have a lot of energy. Yeah. And I'm as irreverent as a human can be. So we connected in so many ways, and we had these weekly phone calls where she'd say, "This is what's going on with your script, and this is where it's going, and every time there'd be this feeling in my body, oh my God, this is good as long as we never meet. And then I can never meet the studio, and I can never meet anybody, because if I meet them, I'm done." So we had this conversation one day, and she said, "I made a reservation. Because it's time we met. I mean, like, this is too good, you know. I mean, we're practically changing clothes." And I said, "Yeah, what are you, a size 2? This is over the phone." She says, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I have a 2 also in my size." So she said, she arranged a place to meet, and I thought, okay, so I now know what it feels like to be on Tinder or whatever it is, on some dating site as a bald man with a comb over, because I have been pretending to be something I'm not. And I know that she thinks I'm young, so what am I going to do? So I thought, can I get a double? But I couldn't get somebody to go in and act for me.
It's a Hallmark movie in itself.
So then I thought, what I'll do.
Being Monica, the movie.
So that morning I got up and I cut bangs, like really long bangs, because I thought that would work. And I had Preparation H under my eyes because it shrinks sensitive tissue. And then I had on soft, dewy makeup, and I wore black, and I did everything, and I only drank water for like 24 hours. And I sat at the bar of this very high-end restaurant, and I waited basically for my funeral. And
she showed up and it was Ron.
She showed up, and I knew it was her in a minute. She had glossy hair that went on forever. She was as thin as a size 2.
It wasn't stripy?
She had a purse the size of a half a cow. I mean, she had that outfit, that thing. And she's looking around like this because she's looking for me, and I'm thinking, I should just leave. I could bang right into her and she wouldn't even notice, and I would be done and it would be fine. But I knew this had to happen, so I sort of went like this. And I saw her face, and she's going, and she's praying that there's someone behind her that I'm waving to. And she's looking, and honest to God, her Botox started to furrow. And she goes, And she comes right over to me. She goes, "Oh my God, I thought you were younger." And I said, "Oh my God, I thought you could hold that in for a minute." And so she sat down. The worst lunch of either of our lives. It was like this girl crush went bleh. And there was nothing to say. My material, which she had loved, no longer mattered. Because in fairness to her, she also knew that she couldn't upsell me because she'd still have to take me into the room. They do not buy, honest to God, if you movie studios, not so much television.
No.
When you walk into a movie studio, because the executives are 12. I mean, they're dressed in a Pee Wee Herman tight little suit, and you walk in and they go, "Shit, my mother's here." And then because I get away with stuff because I'm funny, they're fine and they relax, but they still know that they can sell me. And I can sell in television like that because they don't care as much. Writers can be anything in television, but in movies, it's a whole other world. So this woman and I...
And by the way, this is all behind the scenes
This is all
stuff we're
writing.
talking
All
about. This
behind
is
the scenes,
writing.
none of it matters,
Yeah.
except the work. And so at the end of it, it was so odd, and I thought, oh, I'm just going to let her pay because she's feeling pretty shitty, and she deserves to pay. So she stood up, took her iPhone and her eyeglasses, her eye purse, whatever eye stuff, and off she went, all in her slithery black stuff. And I said, "If you want to reach me, I'll be at Sunny Acres. That's the home I'm checking into this afternoon." And she was gone, out of my life, never heard from her again, and I knew I wouldn't.
And now you got to sit here and look right at her. Years later.
I want to say you got a touch older.
But
more
that's a
fabulous.
horrible, horrible story.
That's
This
a
is,
horrible
and this is
story.
for a writing gig.
But here's the thing, that story, if that hadn't happened, and I had a huge crisis of, oh my God, I got too old for Hollywood. It happened, and I'm a writer. Like, that's just stupid. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have changed. I changed my life because of it. I started writing books. I wrote a one-woman show. I made it be about my business. I made a business work that had nothing to do with anyone
That's
else.
great.
Well, let me ask
Well,
you,
you know,
is this also why you do more voiceover work now? Because you've always done it, but you're doing more of it.
No, I'm just a whore for work. I mean, whatever.
Well, do you know,
it is,
I think
you pay me,
that's
we do it, right?
Right.
I think that's, I was talking to the Ron and Chris before the show. As working in the arts, I don't know if it's just the time or if it's being a woman or if it's aging, but we have to create our own
Damn straight.
opportunities. I created this Women in Comedy Festival because it was harder to get work and harder to, and you...
The She-Dot Festival.
She-Dot Festival.
Which is
May 4th to
awesome.
7th. But you know, you have to, because as a comic, you've got to hustle. You've got to create. I've started writing more, not as much as you, obviously, but I think that's what you have to do. And it's a bit easier now with the internet, and expectations are different. But yeah, and I applaud you because that story made me so sad.
But
let
I
me
think
ask you-
similarly, I mean, I you know, like 6 years ago, I started directing my own
Right.
films, and because nobody was going to hire me to direct.
Right.
And one of an actor who was also a student of mine, came to me and he said, you know, why aren't you're enabling everybody else to make their movies? Why aren't you making your own? And that's a really good question. And so I just started, you know, and it was like the next thing I know, I've got 13 in the can, and my 14th is
That's
coming up next month.
amazing.
How common is it for men, anyone, sorry, how common is it for someone over 50 to break into directing?
It's hard.
Yeah, I would think so.
It's very hard because and yet it's not necessarily a young person's game,
Right?
because you have to you know, I mean, a lot of people grow through different departments on set to become a director, and I always find it kind of funny because you can see the actor's director and the crew's director. I always say there are people who know how to move the camera and people who know how to move the actors.
Sure.
And there are a few that know how to do both. And so I've been sort of teaching myself how to do all of that, and just through the process of work. And I think it's easier right now to be me than ever before.
You know, when I talk to young acting students, if you know, either at a university or something.
I appreciate you motioning toward me when you said that.
Yes. You know, they ask me, you know, how do you sort of survive in this business? And as a Canadian actor, and I would also think this applies to Americans, is that I always suggest that they do everything. Never turn down anything in terms of opportunities, in terms of voiceovers, animation, theater, film, television, and write your own stuff if you can, if you have that gift.
Yeah.
And there's an outlet. I mean, there's more outlets for young people, for anybody and everybody. I think part of our success and part of the knowledge that comes with being an older performer, actor, director, whatever it is that we
Longevity.
do. But there's also a confidence and a different, I don't care what people think in the same way. I used to care what people thought. I actually don't care. I want to do what makes me happy, and I think we all, and you're talking about it, and you're talking about, this is about reinvention, rebranding, and ultimately reinvigorating. And that is what we have to
you know,
do.
And
it's
never
funny,
and
you-
not letting anybody say no.
No.
Right.
Right? I think that that's the most important
'Cause
issue.
you'll get names.
Is because
Someone's-
and people who say, "Oh, why you try even trying," are the people who don't try themselves. They
Sure.
don't want you to make
Yeah,
them
most
look
the
bad.
vocal critics
You
are the
know.
ones who just haven't done anything.
Yeah, I look at I look at the career of John Mahoney, for example. Who's just a really remarkable actor. He didn't start acting until he was 50. He went. He wanted to be an actor when he was a young man, but he was afraid of the lack of stability in the marketplace, and so he went and got himself a good job and did his 20 or 25 years and got his gold watch and his pension, and then went down and enrolled in a class at the Steppenwolf Company
Yeah,
in Chicago.
yeah. There's a number of
Before
those
the
stories,
year was
yeah.
out, he had a Jeff Award on his desk and was on Broadway.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
And that same year he did Say Anything, and then Fraser came along, and so here's
And he
a
didn't really
pers-
start till he was 50.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I
God bless
also,
him.
It
and
just
I-
seems he's always been there, right? He's just one of those people that seems he's always been there.
yeah,
Yeah.
Right?
Very visible.
Len Cariou, Angela Lansbury, the names go on, who are learning lines. Just
Well,
keep
Alan
on keeping.
Rickman, who we lost last year, Alan Rickman didn't start acting until his late 40s.
That's right.
His breakthrough, I think, was Die Hard. I think he was 46.
He did Truly Madly Deeply before
Truly, madly,
that.
deeply.
And
Just
that was
months
a
before.
favorite.
cult
Really?
favorite film.
Yeah, it actually came out after Die Hard.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah, but it was shot before, but we're talking about within months or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But, all this talk, and it is true. I've always said, I know that it's harder for women on screen when it comes to aging and aging out. But there's also something to be said about the expectation of just where you are in general. I now rarely audition anymore for character parts. Even in a movie I wrote, when it came to casting, I said, let me play one of the best friends. And they went, you look good, man. You don't look your age, but no. And they go, we're going to cast somebody 28. And you don't look 40-something, but you don't look 28. And what I found that actually began to work for me is moving into this, playing myself, moving into
Well,
hosting.
you're a perfect example of somebody who's made their own stuff happen.
Yeah.
Your podcast
Yeah.
went to SiriusXM. It's now internationally heard. You've started this. You're one of the big. You've written a couple of books. You're one of the big go-getters, and I admire you greatly. And
But what was funny about that, thank you for that. Thank you very much. But it's when I actually stopped acting and I started playing myself. When I moved into the host role, when I moved into that was actually because for a long time I was going on audition after audition and I wasn't getting, and my problem wasn't that I wasn't good in the audition. I didn't look like any of the parts anymore. It was for years I had gone out for a certain part, and then at some point I'd gotten broader, and I'd gotten
Well, there's a
older,
weird- isn't
and not
there-
old, but I just aged out of these roles that I had been going.
But
in.
not
Every
aged
actor
into the
does.
next, though.
I mean, every actor goes through that.
Yeah.
You see, I just cast a 12-year-old boy to star in a film shooting in South Africa this winter, this spring. And it's going to be a career-defining moment for him. I saw him in a short film at a film festival where I was screening a film, and I went, I need to find that kid and talk to him because I have a movie coming up.
Only casting directors can say that and make it not creepy.
And
by
nobody
the way.
puts out nobody put out an Amber Alert on
I need to
us. And,
find that
the,
12-year-old boy.
but he was so
Right now.
he was so brilliant and held the screen, and I was like, I know exactly. Now, the trajectory. This kid's remarkable because he does his own podcasting. He writes and he's very, very active in social media.
12.
He's gonna be a star. He's gonna be a star.
He's 12. His competition for this role was another 12-year-old boy who has an international podcast that he does on the environmental issues, and he's 12. I was at 12. I was working when I was 12 because of circumstances with my family and stuff. I was knocking on doors selling stuff, and I thought I was a hero, but it's like these kids are remarkable.
Yeah.
My son has, he's not an actor, but he's had his own YouTube channel he begged us to let him have one, and I said, well, and all he does is he opens baseball cards on it.
Yeah.
I know they open.
And he gets hundreds of thousands of views on that.
And he does other things too, but for the most part,
Yeah.
and he does all. I mean, you know, all of us probably are pretty active on social media because of working in show business, but his is a totally different level. Totally different level. He'll put a picture on Instagram, he'll get 300 likes. I've never had 300 likes of anything. Like it's just.
It's
You will
pretty-
now.
It's a different world. Yeah, exactly.
So, but I have a question.
Just tag Monica and you'll troll her crowd. And then
I have a question for Chris, because you are an actor who always is working. Isn't being of your age? What's your talent, frankly?
Well, I got to also say this. You're one of those actors that
You're so castable.
you seem to. Well, yeah. I mean, you actually seem to work more the older you get. Is it?
Well, that's true. Because when I was younger, I had this, a deep voice, and I was even thinner than I am now.
Wow.
So, it was hard to cast me. But as I sort of grew into my voice, this face became sort of aged into. So, and then, of course, I do theater, I do film, I do television, and you also just become more savvy auditioning. You sort of know what to do in the room, and it helps a lot,
Yeah.
the more
I think
experience you have.
being comfortable in your own skin
That's
is,
right.
is the greatest asset
Yeah.
any actor can bring into the room.
Yeah.
Because the camera can see when we say action and your sphincter slams shut, and it's
Yeah.
what's
can
my
see
line,
that.
what's my line, what's my line, and
This
it
is
becomes
interesting.
but it's a tell, like
Yeah.
in poker.
Yeah.
And we know you're not being
And
truthful.
some people don't audition well.
True.
But if they're on set-
But they act up a storm.
Yeah,
And,
if they're on
but-
set, they're wonderful.
but the
And
reason- but
then
the
there's
reason that there's a
the
camera-
reverse, though.
Yeah.
Some people who do brilliant auditions.
yeah.
And
But we sort
I
those
didn't
out pretty
audition
quick.
well.
We sort those guys out pretty quick.
I didn't audition well. I was always good on set once I was there, but I never auditioned.
That's why I
well.
teach audition technique, is because I want actors to understand what the process is.
Now, the other thing-
and how to overcome the room.
But
See,
but
the
there
thing
is something
there's a
about
reason-
aging into that too.
But-
When we
yes.
got into the business, there was no camera in the audition room. You'd go to the
Yeah.
Sutton place and you'd have tea and crumpets and
That's
stuff
right.
and muffins
Yeah.
and sit and talk.
And you'd end up making friends with the casting director. Now you speak into a screen
Yeah.
on your phone, and you send in an audition. And in some ways, that's kind of awesome because you get to do it 40 times if that's what you want.
Well, I find there's also a lot less hurt when it's that impersonal. Auditions could hurt
Depends
when
on
I
who
walked
you
into an
are.
audition when I was living in New York, where I walked in and they looked up and they had my photo. I walked in and they said, "And your name is?" And I said, "Ward Anderson." And the casting director went, "Oh, put an X through my photo and said, "Go ahead
Okay,
and
well,
read."
that's a horrible person.
That's a rotten human
That's a
being.
And that's-
horrible
I mean,
person.
I won't
But
let
at
an
least the
actor-
audition I have to video and send in that I never hear about, I've probably forgotten about after I've sent it off.
I think it's incumbent
It
upon the
varies.
person who's casting to make an actor feel welcome
That's right.
and warm and able to take risks.
Yeah.
And I think that's a benchmark certainly of my room when I'm running casting. The other is you're always going to get a second take, because I think auditions are like crepes and you should throw the first one away. And walk into the room and
Unless
and,
it's that one time.
well,
You get it
the
right.
reason why we make some people do it twice is to make sure that first excellent take wasn't an accident.
Well,
You see,
Right.
I had a second audition for John Carpenter, and usually, as we all know, when you come into the room, you're standing in the middle of the room, and the director or the producer is behind the table. And he called me over, and I sat about this close to him, and he said, "Okay, let's do the scene." And he is looking this close to you because he wants to see what you're doing
Yeah.
in a close-up. And so
Well, because
anyway, I got the
interesting.
part.
Those
so
are great. Those are
Yeah.
great. I
Yeah.
mean, those are directors who really know what they
That's right.
want, and you
Yeah.
already are. If they're doing that with you, you're almost there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
how I feel
now,
about
Now,
that.
I just want to say this other thing, as I always point out to actors, talking about getting older, especially if you're doing theater, is to remain in shape, because the demands become.
I do.
And I mean vocally, and that because
Do your
the
homework.
demands physically, especially on stage.
Well, even mentally,
That's
know,
right.
The
And,
mental muscles of breaking a script down and understanding a character's
Yeah.
intention, they atrophy if you don't do it every
Yeah,
week.
and like
You know?
you can put your back out. You can do, it's remaining in shape as you get older. Because I'm in my 60s, and
What?
the more the more you
The cutoff was 56.
so
lied to me.
The more that's how I get in these.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's really important, and I tell young actors that as well. To stop smoking and to eat right, and just keep yourself in
I'm
shape.
drunk right now.
That's why you didn't get the part.
That was it. Let's talk for a second about people who are aging badly. And by that, I
Are
don't
we naming
mean,
names?
I don't mean they look bad as in they look old. I'm talking about, and as a casting director, I'm sure you've seen people who walk in and they're trying so hard to look younger than they are.
Oh.
My wife works in advertising, and it was actually her a long time ago. Martha knew me at a different time when I had multiple earrings and frosted tip hair and spikiness and all this.
My goodness.
And my wife came to me one day and she said, I know you think this makes you look younger. This doesn't. This makes you look like you're hiding your age. If you dressed your age, you'd look younger.
Yeah, that's right.
And I've seen that. We've seen the people that are so steadfast into, and it could be the bad plastic surgery, right? But it's
Or
also,
the
But also,
headshots.
it's the headshots.
The
It's like-
headshots.
Yes.
They're so surreal.
I cast a movie last summer with Mel Damsky directing, and Mel's a sweetheart, a wonderful, wonderful artist. And we had this one actress came in. She ultimately ended up working on the film. She got the part. But when she had finished and we'd done the audition and we'd recorded what we wanted and we were really happy and we knew what we were going to send to the network, he got up from behind his desk, walked around, picked up her photograph, walked up to her, and he as he walked her out of the room, which is extraordinary in and of itself,
Yeah.
he said to her, "This isn't you.
Yes, right.
You need to retire this shot."
Yeah.
And he said, "I want to. You, the real you, will work a lot
You
more."
can't use your high school graduation picture.
Or you
like in
can't
the 40s,
have
you
a
know.
veil of Vaseline and smoke and stuff around you so that you're not there and you're in some strange ether with your hair blowing back and you walk into the room and you're sort of,
Are those called glam
this
shots?
does not
Yeah.
work.
But you can spot.
I actually have a
those-
smoke machine
you
I
can
take
s-
with me when I
Yeah.
interview.
You can
and
spot
it just
those shots.
comes in as I
kidding,
walk in
they
the door.
stand
from a mile
up.
away, and they jump out off the table by their hideousness, you know. And and that's one of the reasons why I will take stills in the room
Sure.
off of the camera with the artist not even realizing I'm doing it, because they're being natural and they're being relaxed and they're being beautiful.
I was at a grocery store in Toronto, and I saw a very known Canadian TV personality. And,
Name names.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. No.
Get you later.
And this is a gentleman in his mid to late 40s, and who looks good in his mid to late 40s. But he was wearing a trucker baseball cap sideways and a bandana,
Oh, bless.
and he had chains on and a ripped T-shirt and ripped up jeans, and was wearing,
Oh,
you know,
Chris.
Peter Mansbridge?
That'd be the best. That'd be the best.
I think we all know I'm talking about Rick Mercer. And no, but and it was it like seemed like a cry for help.
Yeah.
You know, where I wanted to walk over to him and go, dude, what are you know, it's
What are you doing?
It and I'm sure you guys
But
have
is it a
seen
result, like these photos and this, is it a result of the fear of not being hired because of ageism?
That's right. Yeah.
So here's a question. So
Maybe just
with that,
graduate to a new part.
You know, the question is, the thing is whether to tell your age, and they say that, okay, so 50 is the new 40 and 60 is the new 10. I have no idea anymore because I can't do math, but the idea of this changing up, that you're not your age. So, or do you come clean about your age, or do you just bold-faced lie? Well, I'm fond of the bold-faced lie.
Sure.
And for a reason, not because I'm ashamed of my age, but because it's about my career. And if you pigeonhole yourself,
Exactly.
and if you say that age too often, that's all anybody thinks
That's why
about.
vagueness is important.
Well, it is, and so that's
Yeah,
why in the
that's
old
true.
days they used to give you an age range,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that age range
Yeah.
actually makes sense.
My first headshot had my age range.
If it's
not my
true,
age.
though. So, like for example, we have there's two primary search engines for casting that we use. There's
Google.
breakdown services, and there's casting workbook, which are professional services. And we publish our breakdowns there, and the agents submit their talent through this portal. And sometimes we use it to search. I randomly search actors all the time just to find out who's out there. It's my way of keeping
too
my
is
brain
creepy.
shut. It's not stalking, but it's like sometimes
Pre-stalking. It's
like, you know,
pre-stalking.
but the it's
As long as it's not the
pre-stalking.
12-year-old.
It's research, and but I'll put in an age range, and I'll say I'm looking for females 20 to 30.
Of course
Have
you
I
are.
come
Right?
up?
And you can't believe the number of 50-year-old actors who come up in that search
Oh,
parameter.
dear God.
Because I said, well, honey, that boat sailed.
Yeah.
You know, and I
And
said, it's like,
crashed.
and it's annoying
Well, you know what? And
that they want to compete.
But
for
there's
these
something to
things
be
that they
said
can't.
for constantly looking for the romantic lead. There's something to be said about that. I think a lot of actors and actresses do themselves a disservice when they don't realize that they are a very profitable, very prolific character actor waiting to happen.
Well, look at
Alec
Kathy-
Baldwin was the romantic lead,
Yeah,
and now is
made a
an
brilliant transition.
excellent character actor. I mean, still a very handsome man,
Yeah.
but he's one of many exexamples.
But
of
you
people-
look at Kathy Bates, for example. Now,
Yeah.
Kathy Bates, before
That
she
witch
won
has
the
taken all my work.
before, but before she won the
she wasn't
Oscar,
available today.
Before she won her Oscar for Misery,
Thank you.
she was one of the hardest working character actors in Hollywood. She was doing television, she was doing film, she was doing commercials, she was
Yep.
doing voice work, all over the place. And I was with Michael Shurtleff, who was one of my great mentors and one of the great acting teachers and casting directors of all time, and we were watching the Academy Awards together. I was making a movie about Mike at the time, and so we were having a party, and he watched Kathy win, and I knew that she was a student of his. And she won the award, and Mike went, oh. And I went, aren't you happy for her? Like, and he says, no. He said, she makes $500,000 a year as a journeyman actor. Now she'll be priced out of all that
Oh,
work.
yeah.
And she did not work for years after winning her Academy Award because her agents immediately wanted, $5 million a picture.
Yeah.
And
Right.
all
There's no
that, all
roles,
that,
yeah.
all that television work that she was doing was gone
Right.
to her. So she started directing
Yeah.
as an outlet for her craft and to hire herself.
Again,
Again.
we have to be able to sort
And-
of find the sweet spot where we can make something work for ourselves. You can't.
You have to be elastic.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you have to have, and you're constantly reinventing your business model.
So IMDb is still fighting the fight to get actors' ages taken off,
That's right.
and rightfully so,
Yeah.
because you shouldn't actually have an age. All casting directors know the
Yeah.
talent and you shouldn't be putting pictures out there when you're 50 saying you're 30.
It's a strange business in so many ways, because in some ways we've come a long way. I've talked on this show before, especially when we talked about music and people aging, about when I was a kid, the Monkees had a reunion, and everyone went, "Oh my God, they're so old! Can you believe they're going out on tour?" And they were younger than I am right now. There was an idea at one point where rock artists touring into their 40s was seen as crazy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And now,
Well, there was a time when rock artists died of drug overdoses instead of,
Yeah.
high cholesterol.
Yeah.
I worked.
And,
I worked at Ontario Place Forum back when it was the Forum in the 80s. When
this
I
is
was
a concert venue.
When
concert
it was
venue.
fun.
When it was fun, and my job was taking care of the artists, and I got to dress Davy Jones. Jealous, what? But there were we used to joke Canadian acts on their way up or acts on their way down, because there were so many older acts
Sure.
who still had so much talent and so much interest in performing. Like we had Frankie Valli, Jan and Dean, the Monkees. It was James Brown, Johnny Cash,
Sure.
who were all stars in their own right, but they weren't the stars that they were. And it was there was a certain tinge of sadness at these shows, but also real joy.
Yeah.
Because the audiences who came to see them
So
were
is it our
fantastic.
fault? I mean,
I
are
don't know.
we, the audience, not accepting older
Right.
I think we're getting better, because I'm seeing more and more concerts. I mean, I saw Youssef, Cat Stevens recently. One of the biggest tours of this year in North America is Hall & Oates and Tears for Fears.
Yeah.
that's
They're
right.
already, they just announced a tour together, and they're already selling out venues.
I saw Hall & Oates last year. I love them.
Well, that's what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah.
I think we're turning that when it comes to, at least when it comes to live performance, we're definitely turning that. But then there's this interesting thing where you have actors who've always seemed old. And I don't want to seem weird when I say that, but Patrick Stewart has always been 55. I've never seen 25-year-old Patrick Stewart. Now, I know he's been working that
Right,
long.
right.
Yeah.
I know he's been working that long.
Right.
But Patrick Stewart somehow was frozen in time
You're right.
at 55 years old
And he
or
looks that
whatever.
way always.
And yet beloved. You can put him in a movie and young people want to go see him. They love him. You know what I mean?
Well,
You
it'll
can-
be
you can do that with-
interesting. There's a
Star
new
Trek.
series coming out called The Son, S-O-N, starring Pierce Brosnan in his first TV series role since Remington Steele. And he's playing the grandfather of this. He's the lead. He's a fairly horrible character, but in a Pierce Brosnan with unbelievable charm. And it's a Western. And it's, I think, going to be stunning.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's another example. There's an example
Who
of
took a
somebody
turn.
who took a turn, who was the, and I got to be honest with you. I've always said the people I feel the sorriest for when it comes to the entertainment industry are the romantic leads.
Sure.
Because if you cannot be a character actor, I can understand why you would desperately hold on
Well,
to
they
that
have a
youth as long
short
as you
shelf
can.
life.
Yeah.
That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I said to a casting guy once, I said, I'm so sad I'll never be a romantic lead. And he said, why would you want to be? Why would you
Yeah.
want to be?
Well, just the one time.
Yeah,
The
maybe
pressure.
maybe that was
Yeah.
just the one.
Yeah.
One time.
But the pressure of
Yeah.
being, first of all, the romantic leads work hard.
Yeah.
They carry the weight of a movie on their shoulders, scene to scene, moment to moment, for the entire film. And we cast, hopefully, to support them, to give them people to feed them, and building that ensemble, because it's exhausting. It's enormous work to be a leading man or a leading lady, and it's so much. It's so much more fun to be the second banana, and to not have that pressure
Don't make
on
me
your
feel sorry
shoulders,
for
but
a
to get
leading
just
lady.
as much work and have, and in many instances, have a wider range.
You're trying to make us feel sorry for these gorgeous, wealthy, successful. No, I'm not. Ryan Reynolds, I love you, but I'm not feeling sorry for you.
No.
Well, you know what? There is, but I
But he
get
can
that. I get that you don't feel sorry for them in the fact that we look at the romantic lead as the millionaires.
Right.
Right?
That's
So
what I mean.
we're
yeah.
thinking of a Tom Cruise, and we're thinking of a Ryan Reynolds, and we're thinking of Scarlett Johansson, and we're thinking of Julia Roberts. Okay, but there's the romantic lead that came along, was a romantic lead in a couple of indie movies, didn't become a household name, but now they're not working because that's what they're seen as.
Right.
Right? And now they're getting older, and they can't transition into character roles. They'd like to, but they can't. And I've found some of them wind up going into voice, right? Because that's been a little, that's who, when I say I feel sorry for the romantic lead, I'm talking about the one that didn't become a household name,
Right.
but that's where they were marketed.
They're-
And a lot of times that's in television.
Yeah.
It's people in TV who've had
But
a good
you've also-
10-year run on TV movies.
But you've also got many, many, many examples of people who aged so gracefully from being ingenues to being leading ladies.
Nicole
and then,
Kidman.
Yeah,
so many of these
Well,
amazing-
Leonardo DiCaprio to me,
Yeah.
that floors me every once in a while to see that he's still 40, that he's over 40.
Yeah.
I just still see him as this young man that,
Gilbert Grape.
yeah.
from Gilbert Grape, right?
He's aged
and,
so
and
well,
it's
yeah.
there's several actors like that where every once in a while I got to stop and go, oh yeah, he's middle aged, and I
Look
forget
at
that.
Keanu Reeves,
But it's
local
way
boy
more
made good, and it's
fun.
like, Keanu Reeves is.
He's pretty much frozen in
he's-
time too.
But he's completely reinvented himself with this whole new franchise that is blowing up everything.
Wick.
John
with
Wick.
John Wick, and it's like, this is really interesting because he's playing a kind of beaten down kind of guy. He's wearing his lines beautifully, and proving to people over and over and over again that he's an actor.
Well, I mean, but
And-
then there's those actors that, as they're getting older, there's people that look like romantic leads that I feel have always been character actors, and we made them romantic leads. I think that of Colin Farrell. I think
Yes.
Colin Farrell, because he's so handsome, he's so attractive,
He had
that
a
people
show-
go, we have to put him as the romantic lead, and I see he's such a standout when he does a character role.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When he's a supporting character role.
His first show was Ballykiss Angel. I was living in England at the time.
The TV
and
show?
It was a
Yeah.
Irish-English co-production,
Yeah.
and he played this rake and this great. He was a beautiful man, but the character, it was a total, as you're saying, a totally character-driven, unlikable character, and
Unlikable, likable.
unlikable. Yeah, exactly. Which
Right?
are the
And
best.
it's that quality, and I think probably one of the strongest notes an actor can bring to all of their performances is to add that element of mischief, which is so universally appealing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you saw
I
it
mean,
again
Jack
in
Nicholson built
Bruges.
his entire
While
career
still
on
being
mischief.
unlikable, but
Yes.
yet somehow likable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what my wife calls me around the house.
He did that in Bruges. Like, he's such a great
Yeah.
character actor, and yeah,
That's what I mean.
And he's not a good romantic lead.
Well, I mean, it's not that he's not a good romantic lead, but I just think as he's such a handsome man, people put him into that. But he's got such talent
he
as a
doesn't wanna
character
be that,
actor, and
I
I think he's so
But I
strong
think
in
that,
that.
you know,
I think that of Russell Crowe.
Yes.
Russell Crowe, as he's getting older, he's not an old
Yeah.
man as we think of it in the industry.
But look at what Matthew McConaughey's doing right now. You know, in this new film that he's doing about the gold mine. You know, he's bald in that film. He gained like 60 pounds. You
But
know,
he
he's got a huge
likes-
pop belly.
He likes
to be that
changing it up
chameleon.
all the time.
But that's a wonderful thing. You
Yeah,
know?
I agree.
And I think actors have that. Actors do have that ability to be
The idea
transitional.
of growing old gracefully is so unappealing to me. I think growing old disgracefully is just so much a better choice.
Rage. At
Mm-hmm.
the-
Yeah, like really.
Age rage. There you go.
Age
I think
rage.
that's the new title of this
Against the
episode.
dynamite, yeah.
You know, it's a double-edged sword because there's nothing to be ashamed of with aging, and yet we all do work in the entertainment industry. So I also understand the want to stave it off, especially if it keeps the work coming in. If you could tomorrow be the romantic lead in a movie, you know,
Why
would
can't
you
you?
would you even want that? I mean, you've been so steadily working for 30 years as a character actor.
Well, sure. If you mean the romantic lead is the one who has a new romance in his life, sure.
Okay, well, let's take romantic lead out of it. Let's take, you know, just recently Christopher Plummer playing the lead in the Adam Egoyan film Remember.
Oh, yeah,
right.
right,
You
yep,
know, this sort of
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Obviously, you take a role
Oh, sure.
such as that.
Of course, yeah. And,
But I think that's the point of every actor. Is
Yeah.
actors take roles,
Yeah.
right? And actors, you know, accept work.
Sure.
You know, when I was a talent agent, you know, eons ago, I used to say to my clients, I said, you know, there will come a time when your career will be defined by what you turn down. You know, because it will start letting people know your direction and what you aspire to be your body of work.
Yes.
And I think I think actors can make those choices really young
I agree.
and not have to just be, you know, let the business wag their tail. I think that you can decide really early on. I had a kid in for a commercial audition a couple of years back. He was 8 years old. He arrived at the sign-in desk. He introduced himself to my assistant, and then he said, "Are you seeing people in groups?" He's 8 years old, and my assistant said, "Yes, we're seeing mom and dad, your sister, and you." And he goes, "Are my family here?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's your dad standing over there, and there's your mom over here, and this is your sister." So he went over and introduced himself, and then he pulled them all away from their conversations and what they were doing and their, you know, Facebook on their iPhone, and rehearsed them. And he even organized them as to how they should walk into the room
Oh,
that's
my God.
for do their
That's
slates.
pretty precocious. That.
You know, and it was
Yeah.
like when he walked out of the room, the director, who was a fairly heavyweight American director of this commercial, he looked at all of us and he went, "You know, one day we're all going to be working for him."
Yeah.
You know, and he was, I think, right.
Yeah.
But, you know, this kid changed all the molecules in that room and got everybody hired,
Wow.
That's great.
Wow.
right? That's the power that an actor who's confident and fearless, you know, and as such attractive brings into
Yeah,
the
sure.
space.
Sure.
Yes.
You know, and that's what we're looking for. The reason that camera is in the audition room is because the person who actually decides your fate is never there. He's sitting in his office in Los
That's true.
Angeles or New York with his finger on the skip button. I swear to God, you walk into every executive's office in the industry and pick up their remote, and there's no icon on that button. It's worn
Yeah.
off. Because if you don't show them truth, within 3 seconds they hit the skip. Because they know And the
Can I
camera.
get a
too.
do-over?
Yeah.
I
Last
didn't know
question.
any of this.
Nope. This
Last
is it.
question. It's real quick. Okay. This show, I'm talking about ageism for one reason, because this show that you see in these cameras, this is shot in 4K.
Oh gosh.
The latest technology, the most high definition you can imagine.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
Is
You
this
didn't tell
going
me
to-
that before.
Is this going to get worse as those cameras get less flattering, or will we grow more accepting because those cameras are less flattering?
I think
Cameras are
it's-
never less flattering. It's the light.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we'll become more accepting.
Okay.
I'd like
I
to
don't
see
think
that.
we have a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to bring back celluloid and what's his name? Hurl,
Gauze.
Look,
who's
they've
going
s-
to do this amazing individual lighting.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time anybody sat and gave me a key light and said, let's do.
Yeah.
No, just go over there. I think there's some light.
But,
It's just.
you know, and I think a lot of people in the business, as this generation, because the people who are 60 and over are the fastest growing segment of
Yeah.
the population
Yeah.
right now. I think as that population grows, viewing habits will grow with it, and I think, you know, hopefully this will
But
change
you also
a
said
lot.
in the beginning something about the energy and the. Used another word that was good. But it was about energy.
Yes.
And I think that is what we radiating who you are,
That's right.
whatever that is.
That's right.
It's
Being
true.
authentic is all that we've got. We don't have
Yeah.
anything else.
Being beautiful
Yeah.
at any age,
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
is really.
You know, one of my favorite movies of all time is The Whales of August. And it stars Lillian Gish and Betty Davis at the ends of their career. And, The House of Frankenstein, the British actor. I can't think of his
You're
name right
getting
now.
old. You can't
Boris
I know.
Karloff.
Adult
Boris
David.
Karloff.
No, but very close, very close.
heard Frankenstein.
And it was shot, and you know, there's these women were so gorgeous and so attractive, and the film has such an unbelievably beautiful ethic. You know, it's about gentility, and it's about love, and it's about relationships and support. And I thought, there's a line. Vincent Price was the other actor.
Oh, yes. I
And Vincent
loved
Price
him as a
comes
kid,
into the
yeah.
house in Nantucket Sound of these two older women, and Betty Davis is blind, and she's sitting there, and Lillian brings her in, and as he comes into the room and he's being introduced to Betty Davis, he bowed. And Lillian Gish was like all aflutter, and she says, "Oh, a gentleman who bows." And he said, "It's a nod to a gentler time and present company." And it was like, that's the ethic of that film. And if he walked into the room and did that right now, we'd all melt,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like, because he owned that language and made it sound trippingly off his tongue as if he spoke like that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an actor's job. Mm-hmm.
Let me take a bow to all of you. Thank you, panel. Thank you for
you.
being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that's it. Another episode of Offstage. I want to thank my guests, Chris Britton, Martha O'Neill, Ron Leach, and the always lovely Monica Parker. That's it. And of course, as always, when the show is over, we hope you join the conversation offstage. Good night.
You are adorable.